maker, former clutterholic and borderline hoarder, welcoming you to my happy place, my garden. It is July and I have realised that it must be a good year since I last did a garden tour, and quite a bit has changed in the garden over the last year. I thought I'd just take you on a tour, see what we see, and share it with you. I have two tour guides which are behind the camera, furry ones, cats, Dora and Stanley. I'm sure that they will follow us at some point down the garden. So, as always, we call it the rose arch, even though there's no actual roses on it. It's got this evergreen honeysuckle on it, which is coming out. So when you walk through the rose arch, glorious smell comes out. So that's kind of in full bloom at the moment, which is really nice. It creates a beautiful shade. We do have our lilac here. It's gone over now. It's not in bloom anymore, but it was glorious again this year. So that created a bit of smell. It works quite well with the lilac coming early in the season and then the honeysuckle a few months later. But again, it's just growing really nicely, quite happy where it is. It's one of those classics, isn't it? Just because a plant doesn't do well in your garden doesn't mean that it won't do well. It may just mean that it's not quite in the right place. My lavender that I put in last year is coming up nicely. Oh yes, starting to bush out. Give it a couple of years and they'll be really nicely well established. There are some plants here that I grew from seed, have no idea what they are. I put them in a pot, they started to grow, I stuck them in the garden. We'll find out what they are. It does look as if one of them is going to flower in the next month or so, so we'll see what comes. Lots of sunflowers from the bird seed. I didn't plant these ones. Ironically, I planted 4, I grew from seed 4. Only one of them has survived. All the others got eaten by snails. Yet the ones that dropped from the bird seed seem to not be eaten by the snails. I'm not quite sure why that is. Alliums have gone over, but I like to keep them because they are still nice, even when they're kind of finished for the season. We had a red hot poker, which I don't remember planting, which is over now. I left it because I thought, well, if it's decided it wants to grow there, it can grow there. Again, as you can probably tell, I'm not into one of these preened gardens. I like it to be kind of as natural as possible, really. We've got lots and lots of raspberries coming on our raspberry plants. We've had a good crop every day for about the last week. In fact, I can see some more leaf picking on there this year. I did put in down below some chili plants. Yeah, they didn't do anything. And a couple of bean plants, they haven't done anything either. So again, I'm not going to worry if they don't particularly grow. The tomato plants though seem to be doing quite well. Maybe they're just on the right side of the garden with tomatoes coming. I'm sure that they will redden up in the next few weeks. Moving on down, I cannot remember what this is called, but this has grown massively over the last year. Now normally, as I pass this bush, it would be meowing, because Gatsby, one of our cats, he likes to hide underneath the bush and look at the birds and try and catch the birds, which he does sometimes successfully do. But yes, so this is kind of the Gatsby bush, as I call it now. No idea what its technical name is. Foxgloves, I think. They've done very well this year, especially with the birds and the bees. I put a couple of, I only know them as something carpet, can't remember the name. Again, some plants that are in small but will establish. Now, one of the big changes this year is I've put 2 conifers in. So you can see one here, and there is one here behind the lavender. Ooh. Now, those have been planted this year in honour of 2 of our cats. This one is in honour of Madam, who we had to put down sadly, at the beginning of the pandemic. And this one is honour of Sissy, who sadly passed away, gosh, nearly 6 years ago. Now, we did have an apple tree here for Sissy, which we had planted in her honour, but that died last year. And the reason why I got them matching trees is not because they were sisters. Madam was actually a boy. But because the first time they ever turned up to visit us, they appeared underneath a conifer tree that used to be in our garden. So it seemed appropriate that in their honour they each have a conifer tree, because that's where I first saw them appear in our garden, because they decided to move in with us rather than we got them. And it is now nice because our garden is kind of complete now in terms of honouring our pets, because the pear tree here, the conference pear tree here, this honours Betty, my first ever cat. So her ashes were put in the ground when we planted this pear tree 10 years ago now. So Betty was our first cat. The tree behind is a lovely tree. I don't know what it's called, but it turns a beautiful red orange in the autumn. That honours the neighbour's cat who lived with us, Ginger, and Betty knew Ginger, Ginger knew Betty. Ginger then knew Madam and Sissy, who were on this side of the garden. So there's a connection to all the pets that are kind of planted in honour in our garden. We have our wedding apple tree in the middle of the garden as well, which has got quite a bit of fruit on it. So it's all kind of coming on quite nicely. Through to our pond area. Now, I can't remember what this is called, but this has really come up beautifully this year. And I'm sure this year it's actually lasting longer than it did last year. This has been around for a good 2-3 weeks already. It doesn't look like it's dying down either. So that's good. Our buddleia has come out in the last week or so. Obviously the butterflies and the bees are loving the buddleia. Loving the buddleia. Very important to me that the nature is kind of fed in the garden. Another lilac, which has really kind of doubled in size actually over the last year. Now, we did have an arch here for 2 grapevines, and then the arch kind of collapsed and I cut back, but then this year one of the grapevines was determined to grow, so he started growing back. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to create an arbour along this part of the path, so that the grapevine has something to grow up. It'll also create some shade for the pond. So if we come along here, you can hopefully see the pond, and there are quite a few resident frogs. It may be a little bit too early in the day. There's one that's usually living down at the water's edge, seems to have his head permanently poked out. But it's early in the morning, so the lily flowers are starting to come up. But again, it's really come on this year, as has our tree in honour of my father-in-law, who passed away nearly 6 years ago. This has had a lot of new growth on, which is always great. My pride for this year, my new bird table. Never had a bird table before, always wanted one. This was my reward to myself for achieving a particular business goal, or clutter clearing goal I should say. So really pleased with that. The birds are loving that, as are the cats who sit here watching it. Small rhododendron bush there. Again, that's been in several places around the garden, just trying to find the right spot for it. A magnolia bush, which has gone berserk. Funnily enough, our wedding tree, our apple tree, used to be here, and the magnolia tree was quite small, bush was quite small, and then when we moved the tree, the apple tree, this just completely took over. and it had some lovely magnolia buds on it this year. So everything is looking quite lush. Here's my only sunflower that I planted from seed that has survived. Again, the bees seem to be quite enjoying it. And a cutting that I took last year of one of the lavenders, quite proud that that actually took, along with a cutting that I took last year of the honeysuckle. Again, that was tiny when I took it last year, kept it going over the winter, and it's taking on nicely. So I need to find a place for that to live. Maybe it will go over the arbour. So everything is coming together quite nicely. The birds are loving all of the fat balls that are on all the trees. We can see some of them there coming in for their morning breakfast. But there's one last thing I just want to show you. So this is the clutter clearing office, but I have to show you these two little sofas. I don't know where the cats are. Actually, let's see if we can find Stanley. Sweetie jar. Oh, here he comes, racing down the garden. Come, Stanley. Good boy. Good boy. So yes, it's very important that the cats have their spot in my office. Yes, I know, darling. Look, Stanley, ready? There we go. So they will settle down for the day while I'm at my desk working. Come on, Dora. Come on, darling. Dora, let's go. Let's go. Don't think about it, do it. It's not like her to be so nervous. So yes, they have their spot, and it's a great spot for them to be able to sit on the sofa and just watch the birds at the bird table. It's a very tough life being a cat in the clutter clearing office and the Baker household. So, just step back. That's how the garden is looking. It is always surprising what changes can happen in the space of just a month, much less a year. Things are all growing really nicely, just about finding the right place for them so that they can thrive and just add to the nature element of the garden. So hopefully it won't be quite so long until I do another tour of the garden, but wherever you are, do stay safe, stay well, and I shall see you very soon. Take care.